France's Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has resigned hours after his cabinet was unveiled. The Élysée Palace made the announcement after he met President Emmanuel Macron for an hour earlier this morning. The shock move comes only 26 days after Lecornu was appointed Prime Minister. This following the collapse of the previous government of François Bayrou. Now, several parties in the National Assembly had fiercely criticised the composition of Lecornu's cabinet, which was largely unchanged from Bayrou's, and threatened to vote it down.
A political storm intensifies in Paris. France's prime minister has resigned just hours after forming a new government, and the president who appointed him is now facing isolation not just from the opposition, but from his own allies. The question looms louder than ever. Can Emmanuel Macron survive this crisis? The latest upheaval began on October 6, 2025, when Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu tendered his resignation mere hours after unveiling his ministerial lineup, a government that, in effect, never fully took office. The move came after mounting backlash and threats of withdrawal from coalition partners. Most conspicuously, the center-right party Les Républicains. LR Macron accepted the resignation and immediately asked Lecornu to stay on in a caretaker role while attempting final negotiations with other political groups to salvage stability. But as Macron's political base phrase, the president's options narrow sharply, and observers are now treating this moment as one of the gravest challenges of his second term. To put this in context, the crisis is rooted in Macron's decision in mid-2024 to dissolve the National Assembly and call legislative elections, hoping to consolidate control. Instead, the result was a hung parliament divided between three major blocs: Macron's centrists, the left, New Popular Front, and the far right, National Rally, none able to command a clear majority. Since then, successive governments have collapsed under pressure. Michel Barnier, François Bayrou, and now Lecornu have all attempted and failed to forge durable coalitions. Bayrou himself fell earlier in September after losing a confidence vote in the National Assembly by a wide margin, 364 votes against to 194 in favor. Lecornu filled the void in September 2025, but his time was the shortest in the Fifth Republic, as he resigned 14 hours after introducing his cabinet, and 27 days later. What's amazing is not just how governments fall apart, but also how quickly and dramatically alliances fall apart. There are now cracks in Macron's inner circle. Former Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, who is currently the Secretary General of Macron's party Renaissance, stated in public that he no longer comprehends the president's choices. With his own center-leaning caucus, Edouard Philippe, at the same time, demanded a new prime minister who would just work on passing a budget, and he even hinted at the prospect of holding an early presidential election after that. Philippe's stance does not yet amount to a direct call for Macron's resignation, but it is a clear signal of withdrawal of confidence. Opposition parties are also doubling down. The far left, France Insoumise, has renewed its demand for Macron's dismissal and is pushing for an early dissolution of parliament and new legislative elections. The center-right LR is demanding greater representation in any future government, suggesting a kind of cohabitation where the president's centrist bloc would cede more power to conservatives. Original article's claims. But even those proposals run into a deeper problem. Any new government must survive a hostile and fragmented National Assembly in which any motion of censure could doom it before it starts. Original article and supporting news analysis. Already, prefects have reportedly been instructed to prepare for a dissolution of the National Assembly and possible elections on November 16th and 23rd. Original report, unconfirmed publicly. Amid the chaos, Macron has opted for silence, declining calls to address the nation. He has, however, asked Lecornu to negotiate final compromises with party leaders by Wednesday evening. If those efforts collapse, Macron is said to be prepared to take his responsibilities, language that could mean any number of steps. Appointing a technocratic or left-leaning prime minister, dissolving parliament, or even, though he has long resisted it, resigning. To understand where this might lead, we must examine what Macron's realistic options are, and what the balance of political forces suggests. One possible outcome is that Macron appoints yet another prime minister, this time perhaps from the left or from outside his usual camps, in a bid to rebuild trust and push through the 2026 budget. He might alienate some members of his own party with such action, which would require delicate negotiations. He may even dissolve the National Assembly and hold fresh elections in the hopes that voters will provide him a more robust mandate, which would give the far right even more parliamentary power, something Macron has long sought to prevent. A third, more drastic option would be his own resignation, either right away or after the budget is approved. Although Macron has consistently denied that he would be willing to step down before 2027, voices like Philippe's are starting to influence him in that direction. The French stock index fell, bond yields increased, and credit rating agencies issued new warnings about the dangers of prolonged political stalemate. The financial markets have already responded. Fitch recently downgraded France into the single A category, citing France's rising debt, structural deficits, and now the erosion of governance capacity. The inability to pass a budget is not a technical hurdle. It threatens to immobilize public services, stall investment, and further undermine Macron's credibility. As of now, the most plausible next steps are Macron giving Macron a few more hours to broker a deal, followed either by the appointment of a new government or a parliamentary dissolution and snap elections. His longer-term survival will depend on his ability to reforge alliances, rebuild trust within his own coalition, and avoid alienating too many actors to the left or right. But with relationships frayed, patience exhausted, and public confidence eroded, Macron may well be running out of time. Whether this crisis ends in renewed legitimacy or cascading collapse remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. France's system of divided government is under unprecedented strain, and Macron is now in a race not just to govern, but to endure.